The war room was cold. It was always cold on Veth command ships. The reptilian body ran warm on its own, so the air was kept low to keep the mind sharp. War Marshal Seketh Kor stood at the center of the room, his scaled hands folded behind his back, and he stared at the holographic planet turning slowly in the air before him. It was a small world. Green and brown, mostly flat, with wide-open fields and one modest settlement near the eastern river. The planet was called Arendelle by its inhabitants. The Veth had no name for it yet. They would name it after the conquest, as was tradition. Seketh Kor had done this many times before. 41 campaigns in 30 years. He had taken worlds from the Dralkin, from the Sewer Collective, even from the iron-shelled Korath who had laughed at the Veth until the very end. He did not find conquest exciting anymore. He found it administrative. His adjutant, a young officer named Thesic, stepped forward and activated the briefing files. The data hung in the air beside the planet, columns of numbers, images, biological reports, behavioral assessments. The species is called human, Thesic said. They call themselves that in most of their languages. They originate from a single world in this sector. Arendelle is one of their outer colonies. Population, approximately 12,000. Mostly agricultural. The settlement has a small defense garrison, 40 soldiers at last count. Possibly fewer. Seketh Kor studied the images of the humans. They were strange-looking things. Upright, two-legged, almost completely without natural armor. Their skin was thin, soft. It came in different shades but offered no real protection against anything. Not claws, not heat, not even a firm strike. Their skeleton was internal, made of calcium. Their eyes faced forward, which at least suggested they were predators at some point in their history, but the rest of them looked like prey. They had no shell, no chitin, no scales, no dense hide. They were, by any biological measure, fragile. How long have they been a spacefaring species? Seketh Kor asked. Approximately 230 of their years, Thesic said. They move fast for a young species. They have colonized roughly 60 worlds. Their government is called the Human Confederation. It is a loose political union. Their military, the Confederation Navy, is still developing. Arendelle has no naval defense presence. The nearest human warship is 4 days away. Seketh Kor nodded slowly. He walked around the hologram, looking at the planet from different angles the way a man might walk around a table before sitting down to eat. And their soldiers? He asked. Thesic pulled up the combat assessment file. Unaugmented. No synthetic muscle enhancement. No bioarmor. No chemical combat stimulants in standard use. They rely on handheld projectile weapons and basic energy rifles. Their combat doctrine is conventional defensive formations, fortified positions, coordinated fire. Nothing unusual. He paused. Our analysts rate them as a Class 2 resistance risk. Minimal. Someone at the back of the room made a low sound, not quite a laugh, but close. Seketh Kor didn't turn around. He knew the feeling in the room. He had felt it himself when he first read the file. There was something almost absurd about preparing a military operation against a species that had no natural armor. The Veth had scales that could deflect a blade. Their soldiers wore Krath-class combat plating on top of that. A human in a fistfight with a Veth soldier was not a fight. It was a problem that solved itself. We will send one enforcement company, Seketh Kor said. Krath-class. Standard suppression loadout. Sub-Commander Vrethus will lead. Thesic looked briefly uncertain. One company? For a 12,000 population colony? One company is already generous, Seketh Kor said flatly. This is not a war. This is a notification. That got a real laugh from the back of the room. Seketh Kor allowed it. It was an honest reaction. One company of Veth soldiers in Krath-class armor, each one standing nearly 2 meters tall and weighing close to 200 kilograms in full kit, moving against 40 undertrained human garrison soldiers and a colony of farmers. He would have been surprised if it lasted until sundown. On Arendelle, the morning was quiet. The fields were gold. The air smelled like cut grain and river mud. Sergeant Mara Voss was on her knees near the eastern fence line, hammering a post back into the ground. One of the younger farmers, a boy named Davi, barely 17, was holding the post steady while she drove it in. They had been out since before sunrise. The fence kept the grain eaters out of the field, and the grain eaters had been particularly determined this season. Mara was 34 years old. She had a narrow face and a sun-darkened complexion, and her brown hair was pulled back in a way that suggested she had not thought about it this morning. She had been a Confederation soldier for 12 years, most of it in postings exactly like this. One, quiet colony worlds, where the biggest emergencies were equipment failures and the occasional border survey dispute. She had seen no real combat. Her file listed her as competent, reliable, and unremarkable. She hit the post once more, and it held. Good, she said, and stood up, pressing one hand briefly against her lower back. Davi looked up at the sky. It had been doing something strange in the last few minutes. The clouds to the west were moving wrong, not with the wind, but against it. And there was a sound, a deep sound, low enough to feel in the chest before it could be heard with the ears. "Sergeant," Davi said. "I hear it," Mara said. She stood still for a moment, eyes on the sky. Then the clouds broke apart, and the ships came through, 4 of them, dark and wide and angular, burning orange at the rear thrusters. They were big, much bigger than any civilian transport. They moved with the kind of slow, deliberate certainty that only military craft carry. They weren't human ships. Davi made a small sound. His hands had gone tight on the fence post, still in his grip. Mara reached down and picked up her rifle from where it leaned against the fence. She checked the charge. Full. She slung it over her shoulder. "Go back to the settlement," she told Davi. "Find Garrison Corporal Het. Tell him to wake everyone up and get them to the storm cellars. Move quietly. Don't run. Don't make noise." "What are you going to do?" Davi asked. Mara looked at the ships descending toward the far field. She looked at the fence post she had just hammered in. She looked at the next loose one, 3 meters down the line. She picked up the hammer. "I'll be there in a minute," she said. She drove the second post in while the ships landed. She drove it in properly, 3 solid strikes. Because a fence post done wrong just means you're out here again tomorrow. When she was done, she set the hammer down, adjusted the rifle on her shoulder, and walked toward the settlement at a pace that was neither hurried nor slow. The ship doors opened. Soldiers came out. Large ones, armored in dark plating that caught the morning sun. They moved toward the settlement. Mara moved toward them. The 2 groups saw each other at the same moment, in the open field, with the gold grain on both sides and the wide sky above. The Veth soldiers stopped. Mara did not stop. She walked toward them with her rifle at her side, and her expression calm. And something about that one small, unarmored human, walking toward a wall of armored soldiers without slowing, made the Veth line hesitate in a way that none of them would have predicted, and none of them could quite explain. Subcommander Vrethis had done this before. Not this exactly, not this planet, not these people, but the shape of it was familiar. You land. You advance. The locals see the armor and the numbers and the weapons, and something old and animal in them takes over. They step back. They lower their eyes. Some of them cry. Some of them run. The smart ones put their hands up immediately and ask what the new rules are. That was how it went. That was how it always went. He watched the human woman walking toward his line, and he felt the first small, strange feeling that today might be different. She was not large. Not by any measure. She stood perhaps a head and a half shorter than the average Veth soldier, and his soldiers were in full Krath-class plating, which added another 20 centimeters and nearly 60 kilograms to each of them. She had no armor. She had a light rifle hanging at her side, not even raised. Her clothes were dirty from what looked like outdoor work. She had a smear of dark mud on her left knee. She walked like someone who had somewhere to be and intended to get there. Vrethis raised one hand, and his line stopped. He stepped forward himself, ahead of his soldiers, which was a standard dominance display, put the ranking officer at the front, let the locals process the hierarchy visually. It worked on most species. The instinct to recognize authority was nearly universal. The woman stopped about 4 meters from him. She looked up at him. He was a full head taller than her, even without the armor, And in the armor, he was enormous. She looked at him the way someone might look at a door they were deciding whether to knock on. "This is a Veth Dominion enforcement action," Vrethis said, in the trade language that the briefing said humans understood. "This colony is being absorbed under Dominion jurisdiction. There is no need for resistance. Put down your weapon and direct your people to gather in the central settlement area. Compliance will be noted and treated favorably." The woman was quiet for a moment. "No," she said. Vrethis blinked. His translator confirmed the word. It was a simple word. One syllable. She had said it the way you say it when someone asks if you want more salt on your food. He had not heard that word in the field in 11 years. He decided she did not understand the situation. That was the charitable interpretation. She was one soldier, possibly the only one present, and she had not yet fully processed what was standing in front of her. That happened sometimes with species who had never encountered the Veth before. The scale didn't register immediately. "You are one individual," he said, keeping his voice level. "I have 80 soldiers behind me. Your garrison has been identified and will be neutralized regardless of your cooperation. The only variable here is how much difficulty your people experience during the transition." The woman glanced past him at his soldiers. She looked at them the way you look at a weather forecast, taking in information, calculating. "Your ships landed in Field 4, she said. "That's the grain storage field. You've already crushed about 6 weeks of food supply under your landing gear." She paused. "I'm going to need you to pay for that." Vrethis stared at her. Behind him, he heard one of his soldiers shift their weight. He decided the diplomatic phase was over. He nodded once to the 2 soldiers on his left flank, a standard instruction, meaning, move forward, take the subject into custody, use minimal force. They were experienced soldiers. They knew how to restrain a small, unarmored individual without causing unnecessary injury. It was supposed to take about 4 seconds. It did not take 4 seconds. The first soldier moved in from the left, reaching for the woman's arm with a gauntleted hand. It was a practiced motion. He had done it hundreds of times. The Krath-class gauntlet closed around a human arm, and the compliance hold was simple. Lift, rotate, apply pressure at the shoulder joint, and the subject went down. What happened instead was that the woman moved. Not away, not back. She moved into the grab, which was wrong, which was backwards. She stepped inside the soldier's reach before the grip could fully close, and her free hand came up and did something to his arm. A short, precise movement, a rotation at the elbow, and there was a sound. The sound was not loud. It was not a crack or a crash. It was more like the sound a thick piece of paper makes when it folds. But it came from the soldier's armor. The Krath-class elbow joint, which was rated to withstand a Draken war axe blow, folded inward. The soldier made a sound that Vrethis had never heard from one of his own troops before. A short, high sound. Then the soldier stepped back, and his arm was hanging at an angle it should not have been hanging at. The second soldier came in faster, less careful, going for a body tackle. He outweighed the woman by roughly 150 kilograms in full kit. The physics of it should have been simple. She sidestepped, let him pass, and pushed. She pushed him with both hands, flat-palmed, at the lower back. It was not a powerful push by any visible measure. She did not wind up. She did not brace or strain. But she caught him mid-step, off balance, and the push had some angle to it, some rotation, and he went into the ground face first, with a sound like dropped cargo. She still had her rifle at her side. She had not raised it once. Vrethis stood very still. His line was not moving. His 80 soldiers, in their full Krath-class plating, were standing in a field watching one small human woman put 2 of them on the ground in about 3 seconds. And nobody had moved because nobody had processed it yet. The brain takes a moment when something happens that it did not expect and had no category for. The woman took 2 steps back. She picked up her rifle now, raised it, and held it steady on Vrethis. "I would like you to collect your soldiers," she said, "and move back to your ships while I go get the rest of my garrison." Vrethis did not move back to his ships, but he did signal a halt to any further advance. His hand went up without him fully deciding to raise it. It went up because something in the back of his old soldier's brain was sending him a message that the front of his brain had not yet accepted. This is not going the way you planned. The engagement that followed lasted 2.5 hours. Mara Voss and the 11 soldiers of the Arendelle garrison, plus 4 civilian volunteers who had ignored her direct instructions to stay in the storm cellars, held the settlement's main road against 3 separate advance attempts. They did not hold it cleanly. Mara took a hit to the ribs in the first hour that cracked 2 of them. Private Sene took a blast to the leg that left her limping. One of the civilian volunteers, an older farmer named Gross, broke his hand on a Veth soldier's helmet and then kept fighting with the other hand, which Mara thought was idiotic and brave in equal measure. But the Veth did not take the road. Vrethus pulled his soldiers back to the field perimeter and opened his command channel. His hands, he noticed, were not entirely steady as he typed. He filed the contact report in the standard format. Unit designation, engagement duration. Objectives achieved, none. Casualties on his side, 9 soldiers with injuries. 2 requiring immediate medical attention. 1 with a joint failure in the armor that the engineers said they had never seen caused by hand-to-hand contact before. He wrote that last part twice, because the first time it came out sounding like he was making it up. At the bottom of the report, in the field marked Additional Observations, he wrote, Species does not respond to pain deterrence as modeled. Physical compliance techniques are largely ineffective. Request tactical reassessment before further engagement. Do not rely on existing intelligence file. He sent it. Then he sat in the field in his excellent armor and looked at the small settlement where the humans were. And he thought about the way that woman had moved. Not with power, not with size or rage or desperation. With knowledge. Like she had known exactly where the weak point was before she touched it. Like she had done it 100 times before. Like she had maybe done it 1,000 times before. On things much larger than him. He thought about that for a long time. War Marshal Sekath Kor watched the footage 3 times. The first time he watched it, he thought there was something wrong with the recording. The second time he watched it, he thought there was something wrong with his eyes. The third time he watched it, he sat back in his chair and said nothing for a long while. And the entire war room stayed quiet, because nobody wanted to be the first one to speak. The footage was from a helmet camera, one of Vrethus's soldiers, the one who had gone in for the body tackle in the first contact. The camera had survived the fall. It had recorded everything. On the screen, the woman moved through 3 soldiers in 11 seconds. The first one she redirected with her forearm, using his own forward momentum to send him sideways into the second one. The second one grabbed her from behind. Both arms, a full lock around her torso. She dropped her weight suddenly, straight down, and his grip broke, and then she was behind him, and she did something to the back of his knee, with her foot, a precise kick. A very specific angle, and he went down. The third one was the one everyone in the room was staring at. He was a senior soldier. His armor was the newer Krath-class variant, the updated model with reinforced chest plating, rated for low-yield plasma impacts. He outweighed the woman by over 100 kilograms without the armor. With the armor, he was closer to 180 kilograms heavier than her. He grabbed her by the front of her jacket with both hands. It was a solid grab, the kind that ends things. She put one hand on his wrist and one hand on his elbow, and she turned. That was all. She just turned, a short rotation of her body, and she used the angle and the leverage and whatever it is that humans know about the relationship between force and joints, and the chest plate of his armor, the reinforced, plasma-rated, updated, Krath-class chest plate folded. It did not crack. It did not shatter. It folded, like something soft, like something that had never been meant to resist what was being applied to it. The metal bent inward at the point where the grab had anchored it, and the soldier made a sound, and he let go, and he stumbled back with his arms up, in the involuntary way that bodies move when they are trying to protect themselves from something they do not understand. The woman stepped back. She was bleeding from her side. She was breathing hard. She was not at full strength. Anyone watching could see that. She was hurt, and tired, and running on something that was not physical energy anymore. She was still standing. Thesic, the adjutant, was the one who finally spoke. His voice came out quieter than he intended. She barely touched him, he said. Sekath Kor did not respond. He was looking at the frozen image on the screen, the bent chest plate, the stumbling soldier, the woman upright in the middle of it all. He turned to his intelligence team. There were 4 of them, senior analysts. The best he had. They looked uncomfortable, which on a Veth face meant the scales around the jaw were pulled tight and the eyes were slightly too still. "Tell me what we missed," he said. The lead analyst, a woman named Orith. We stepped forward. She had clearly been preparing for this conversation since the contact report arrived. She pulled up a new set of files, not the original briefing materials, but deeper records. Older records. Things pulled from human data networks, translated, cross-referenced. Their evolutionary history, Orith said. We assessed them as prey class in early biology because of the soft exterior. That was an error. They are predators. Specifically, they are what their own scientists call persistence predators. They did not evolve to kill quickly. They evolved to follow, to track, to keep moving, long after other animals stop. She pulled up images, old ones, from early human history. Primitive humans, barely recognizable, running across flat open land in the heat of the day, following animals 10 times their size. Their prey would outrun them easily in a short distance, Orith continued. So the humans did not try to outrun them. They simply did not stop. They would follow the same animal for hours, sometimes an entire day. The animal would tire. The human would not, or would not stop even when tired. The prey would eventually collapse from exhaustion. The human would walk up to it and finish it. The room was quiet. Their pain response is abnormal, Orith went on. Most species have a strong withdrawal reflex when something hurts. The body retreats. It is a survival mechanism. Humans have this reflex, but they have a documented ability to override it, not through any chemical augmentation, through decision. They simply choose to continue. Their own medical literature describes individuals fighting through injuries that should have caused unconsciousness. It is not rare. It is trained. Seketh Kaur looked at the footage again, the woman with the cracked ribs, still moving. The grip strength, he said. Orith nodded. We assessed them as a soft-bodied species and assumed grip strength in the lower ranges. This was wrong. Human hand and forearm grip strength is a significant outlier among species of similar body mass. It developed over hundreds of thousands of years of tool use and climbing. Their fingers can exert sustained pressure that is genuinely difficult to break. She paused. More importantly, they know how to use it. They have martial traditions going back thousands of years. Every technique we observed in that footage has a name. Some of those techniques are older than our current form of government. Someone at the back of the room said, very quietly, "They've been training to fight each other." Yes, Orith said. For all of recorded history, their species spent most of its existence in conflict with itself. Every generation, on every continent, humans were developing better ways to damage the specific anatomy of other humans. They know where bones break. They know which joints bend the wrong way under pressure. They know exactly how much force is needed and at exactly what angle. She looked at the bent chest plate on the screen. Our armor was designed to stop energy weapons and impact force. It was not designed to resist rotational stress applied at a specific point by someone who has spent years learning where the weak points are. Seketh Kaur stood up. He walked to the screen and looked at the frozen image up close. The fold in the armor. The clean, deliberate geometry of it. He had fought the Drulkin. The Drulkin were powerful, massive, dense, built like architecture. Fighting them was like fighting a wall. You needed heavy weapons, siege tactics, overwhelming force. This was not that. This was something different. This was not a wall. This was a key, something that had been shaped, over thousands of years, to fit into the exact spaces where things broke. He turned back to his team. How many humans are currently holding the settlement? Orith checked her data. Best estimate, 14. Sergeant Voss and 10 garrison soldiers, plus 3 civilians who appear to have joined voluntarily. One of the soldiers has a leg injury. Voss herself has multiple rib fractures confirmed by thermal imaging. 14. Seketh Kaur said. Yes, sir. And Vrethus has 80. Yes, sir. Seketh Kaur looked at the floor for a moment. Then he looked back at the screen. He looked at the woman in the footage, frozen mid-motion, hurt and tired and still somehow the most dangerous thing on that planet. He thought about the file. The clean, confident file that had called them Class 2 resistance. Minimal, soft-bodied, unaugmented. He thought about how they had written that file without once asking the question that now seemed like the only question that mattered. Not can they stop us, but what did they do to each other for 10,000 years before we arrived? Send 2 more companies, he said, and tell Vrethis not to engage close range. Hold the perimeter and wait. Thesic relayed the order. Nobody in the room laughed this time. Nobody made any sound at all. Outside, through the ship's viewport, Arendelle turned slowly in the dark, green and brown and quiet. Its one small settlement lit up against the night like an ember that refused to go out. By the 9th hour, Vrethis had stopped predicting when it would end. He had stopped after the 6th hour, when his second advance had been pushed back by 7 humans in a drainage ditch who threw improvised smoke and moved through it like they had eyes that worked in the dark. He had stopped after the 7th hour, when his supply line to the eastern landing pad was cut not by weapons, but by 3 humans who crawled through the grain field on their stomachs for 40 minutes, and then quietly disabled 2 of his communication relays with tools they had clearly brought from a maintenance shed. He had stopped after the 8th hour, when one of his soldiers reported that someone had let the air out of the rear thrusters on landing ship number 3. Flat tires. They had given him flat tires. He was sitting in the mobile command post now, in the dark, with his senior squad leaders arranged around him, and all of them looking at maps that were becoming less accurate by the hour. The 2 additional companies that Seketh Corps had sent were on the ground, which meant he now had 240 soldiers on Arendelle, against 14 humans, one of whom had fractured ribs, and one of whom had a bad leg. 240. They're not fighting us, said squad leader Heron, who was the most experienced soldier in the room and had the flat, tired voice to prove it. They're moving us. Every time we advance somewhere, they're already gone. Every time we hold somewhere, something stops working. They know this land, another squad leader said. They built this land, Heron said. They planted those fields. They dug those drainage ditches. They know where every shadow falls at every hour. He paused. We are on their ground, and they have been on this ground for years, and we have been here for 9 hours. Vrethis said nothing. He was looking at the map. He was thinking about the woman, Sergeant Voss. She had been everywhere in the footage, not always visible, but always present. A decision here, a redirect there. When his soldiers pushed west, she was pulling people east. When his supply line moved, she was already watching it. She was hurt. She had been hurt since the 1st hour. She was running on broken ribs and bad sleep and whatever it is that makes certain people refuse to stop. And she was still making better decisions than he was. His comm unit buzzed. He looked at it. The signal was coming from inside the settlement, but it was on a Veth military frequency. A low-level one, not encrypted. The kind used for short-range coordination between squads. Heron looked at the unit. That's our frequency. Yes, Vrethis said. He picked it up. Sub-Commander Vrethis, said a voice. It was a human voice, a woman's voice, speaking in the trade language with a flat, practical accent. This is Sergeant Mara Voss, Arendelle Colonial Defense. I found one of your comm units in the field. I hope you don't mind. Vrethis stared at the comm unit for a moment. Sergeant Voss, he said carefully. You've been here 9 hours, she said. You've sent 3 advances and lost ground on all 3. You've had 2 communications relays disabled and 1 landing ship that isn't going anywhere tonight. A pause. I have 14 people. 6 of them are farmers who had never held a weapon before this morning. One of them, the old man with the broken hand, keeps doing things I specifically told him not to do, which is its own problem. Vrethis' squad leaders were all staring at him. He kept his voice level. What do you want, Sergeant? I want to talk about your options, she said, as if this was a normal thing to say. As if she was not a single garrison soldier with broken ribs, speaking to a superior military force from a comm unit, she had taken off one of his fallen troops. The way I see it, you have 2 real choices. You can escalate, Call in orbital support. Start hitting the settlement from above. That ends the ground problem, but it turns 12,000 civilian deaths into a political problem for the Dominion, and I'm told your government cares about how things look to the outer systems." She paused, to let that sit. "Or," she said, "you can leave." "Leave," Vrethis repeated. "Take your soldiers, get on your ships, the 3 that still work, and go back to wherever you came from. No more casualties on either side. Clean exit." Another pause. "I'll even tell people you left voluntarily, that you assessed the situation and made a command decision, which is technically true." Vrethis looked at his squad leaders. Heron had his eyes on the ceiling. The others were carefully looking at nothing. "You are one garrison sergeant," Vrethis said, "on an agricultural colony, with 14 people." "Correct," Mara said. "You cannot actually stop us from taking this settlement." There was a short silence. When she spoke again, her voice was the same flat, calm, completely without performance. "Sub-Commander," she said, "I want you to think carefully about what this night has cost you. 9 hours, 43 injuries among your soldiers, 3 pieces of equipment disabled, 2 companies of reinforcements called in, which means your marshal is watching this closely and asking questions." She let that sit for a second. "Now I want you to imagine what the next 9 hours look like, and the 9 after that. And I want you to do one more thing." "What?" Vrethis said. "I want you to think about what happens when actual soldiers arrive." The comm unit went quiet. Not dead, the line was still open. She was waiting. Vrethis set the unit down on the table. He looked at the map. He looked at his squad leaders. He looked at the damage report on the screen. To his left, the list of names, the list of injuries, the steady count that had been growing all night. He thought about the intelligence file. Class 2. Resistance. Minimal. He thought about the footage of the chest plate folding. He thought about an old farmer with a broken hand who kept ignoring direct orders and kept fighting anyway. He picked the comm unit back up. "I will need to consult with the war marshal," he said. "Of course," Mara said. "I'll be here." She sounded like someone who had all the time in the world. The conversation between Vrethis and Seketh Kor lasted 14 minutes. It was not a comfortable conversation. Seketh Kor was not the kind of commander who tolerated the suggestion of retreat, and for the first several minutes, he said so in terms that were direct and detailed. Vrethis listened without interrupting. He had served under Seketh Kor for 8 years, and he knew when to let the wave break before speaking. When the marshal was done, Vrethis said one thing. "Sir, she is asking us to carry a message." A silence on the line. "What message?" Seketh Kor said. Vrethis repeated it exactly as Mara had given it to him, because he thought the exact words mattered. That they were not ours. That the file was wrong. That whatever they thought they knew about this species was built on a foundation of comfortable assumptions and bad questions. The message was simple. 4 words. After everything else. We are not prey. Seketh Kor was quiet for a long time. Outside, on Arendelle, the fields were dark, and the settlement was lit, and somewhere in there, 14 humans were sitting in the dirt, tired and hurt, waiting with a patience that made no biological sense, and all the sense in the world. "Pull them back," Seketh Kor said finally. "All of them. Back to the ships." "Yes, sir." "And Vrethis." "Sir. Bring me the full footage. Everything from every helmet. Every second of it." A pause, heavy and slow. "I want to know what else we missed." The line closed. Vrethis stood up, straightened his armor, and went to give the order. On the other end of the comm unit, somewhere in the dark settlement, Mara Voss heard the first sounds of armored soldiers moving back toward their ships, and she sat down on the ground against a cold stone wall, and she closed her eyes, and for the first time in 9 hours, she let herself feel how much her ribs hurt. It was quite a lot. She breathed through it slowly, the way her first combat instructor had taught her, not fighting the pain, just letting it be there, just existing alongside it. Then she opened her eyes, looked at the darkness, and started thinking about the next problem. The Veth War Council met in a room built to make people feel small. The ceiling was high. The walls were dark stone. The chairs were arranged in a half circle, at an elevated level, so that whoever stood at the center of the room had to look up at the people judging them. It was designed that way deliberately. Every war marshal who had ever stood in that room understood the message before they opened their mouth. Seketh Kor had stood in this room 4 times before. 3 of those times he had been receiving honors. Once he had been defending a decision to delay a campaign by 2 weeks, a minor thing, settled quickly. He had never stood here to explain a withdrawal. He stood straight. He kept his hands still at his sides. He looked up at the 12 council members in their elevated seats, and he told them the truth, without softening any of it. He told them about the file, about Class 2 resistance, about the assessment that had called humans minimal, fragile, unaugmented, and not worthy of serious planning. He told them about 9 hours on the ground, 43 injuries, equipment disabled by people with maintenance tools, a supply line disrupted by 3 humans crawling through a grain field on their stomachs in the dark. He told them about the footage, about the chest plate folding. He played it for them on the council room screen, the same footage he had watched 3 times on the ship, the same 11 seconds that had changed how he understood the word dangerous. He watched the council members watch it. He saw the moment each of them got to the fold in the armor. He saw their expressions do the same thing his had done. He told them about the comm call, about Sergeant Voss on a stolen Veth frequency, speaking in a flat, calm voice, offering terms to a force that outnumbered her 20-1. He told them about the message she had sent back with him. 4 words. The council was quiet for a moment after he finished. Then the eldest member, a gray-scaled veteran named Counselor Drath, who had been on the council for 30 years and had approved more campaigns than he could probably remember, leaned forward in his seat. "You withdrew," Drath said. "Because of one woman." "I withdrew," Seketh Kor said. "Because the intelligence was wrong. Because everything we believed we knew about this species was built on assumptions that nobody tested. Because I watched a soldier in updated Krath-class armor get folded by a person with fractured ribs and no augmentation, and I understood that we did not know what we were dealing with." He paused. "And because she told me to think about what happens when actual soldiers arrive. And I thought about it. And I did not have a good answer." Another silence. Counselor Drath sat back. Around him, the other council members exchanged looks, the kind of looks that had already made a decision and were simply waiting for the conversation to finish. Seketh Kor saw it. He had been in enough rooms to know when a conclusion had already been reached before the evidence was heard. "We appreciate your report, War Marshal," Drath said. "Your recommendation against further engagement with human territories is noted." "And?" Seketh Kor said. "And the Council has determined that a single failed enforcement action on a minor agricultural colony is not sufficient grounds to abandon Dominion expansion in that sector." Drath's voice was smooth and final. "The situation calls for a proportional response. Not a patrol company. A fleet." Seketh Kor looked at him. "You watched the footage." "We watched it," Drath said. "One human. One moment. We are not building strategy around one moment." Seketh Kor said nothing for a long time. He looked at the Council 12 faces, all looking back at him with the particular expression of people who believed that the solution to a problem you had failed to solve with a small amount of force was simply more force. He thought about Arendelle, about the grain fields and the river, and the small settlement lit up at night, about a woman with broken ribs making cold decisions in the dark, about an old farmer fighting with one hand, about 7 people in a drainage ditch who moved through smoke like they were born in it. He thought about what Orith had told him. Thousands of years, every generation, getting better and better at understanding exactly how things break. He thought about the 4 words. "We are not prey." "Very well," he said quietly. He picked up his record tablet from the floor beside him. "I will note my recommendation in the official record." "Noted," Drath said. "You are dismissed, War Marshal." Seketh Kor walked out of the room. He did not look back. On Arendelle, 1 year later, the morning was the same. Gold fields. River mud smell. Wide open sky. Mara was at the fence. It was a different section, this time the north side, where the posts had been damaged during the occupation. The Veth ships had clipped the fence line on their way out, which she thought was probably not intentional but was still annoying. She had been meaning to fix it for 3 weeks and kept getting pulled into other things. Today she had woken up early specifically to get it done, before anyone could interrupt her. Davi was not with her this time. He had joined the Colonial Defense full-time after the occupation and was currently in a training program 2 settlements over. She had heard he was doing well. She was not surprised. She was almost done with the 3rd post when she heard the ship. It was a single ship, not 4. And the sound was different. She knew that sound. She had grown up hearing it on broadcast feeds and training videos. It was a Confederation Navy drop shuttle. The real kind. She finished the post. 3 solid strikes. It held. She stood up and turned around. The shuttle had landed in Field 2, which was the sensible place to land, flat, clear. Nothing growing there yet this season. A ramp extended from the side and a man walked down it in a Confederation Navy Admiral's uniform, dark blue with silver at the shoulders. He was tall, older, with a short gray beard, and the kind of careful walk that came from spending a lot of time on ships. 2 aides walked behind him, carrying data tablets. He crossed the field toward her and stopped a few meters away, looking at the fence, then at her, then at the hammer in her hand. "Sergeant Voss," he said. "Admiral," she said. "Admiral Kale," he said. "Confederation Navy, 7th Expansion Fleet." He looked at the fence post she had just hammered in. "I can come back, if this is a bad time." "You're fine," she said. She set the hammer down on the ground. "What's happening?" Kale looked at the sky briefly. Not the way someone looks at weather, the way someone looks at a thing they've been tracking for a long time. "Veth Fleet," he said. "Not a patrol company. Not an enforcement unit." He looked back at her. "A real fleet. 74 warships. They are currently 11 weeks out, based on trajectory." He paused. "They filed no diplomatic notice. They are not slowing down." Mara looked at the sky too. It was blue and clear, and completely ordinary. "How much time do we have to prepare?" she asked. "We're already preparing," Kale said. 7 Confederation Navy battle groups are being repositioned. 15 colony worlds in the sector are being reinforced. We have been building toward this for the past 8 months, since we intercepted the Veth Council session and understood what they had decided. He paused. "But Arundel is in the projected approach corridor, which means this is going to be one of the first places they reach." Mara nodded slowly. She looked at her fence, looked at the fields, looked at the river in the distance catching the morning light. "What do you need from me?" she asked. Kale studied her for a moment. Whatever he had expected to find here, nerves, or urgency, or the weight of it showing on her face, he did not find it. She was just standing in a field, the same as she had been when the Veth had first come, calm in the way that was not the absence of feeling but the presence of something steadier than feeling. "Resources," he said. "People. Whatever knowledge you have about Veth ground tactics from the occupation." He paused. "And frankly, Sergeant, your time. I'd like you with us when this starts. Formally, I'm offering you a field commission." Mara was quiet for a moment. She looked at the fence. 2 posts left. She could finish them in 10 minutes. "I'll need decent coffee," she said. "The supply drops out here have been terrible." Kale blinked. Then, despite everything, despite the 74 warships 11 weeks out, despite the weight of what was coming, he laughed. It came out surprised and genuine, the laugh of a man who hadn't expected to laugh this morning. "I'll see what I can do," he said. Mara picked up her hammer. "Give me 10 minutes," she said. "I want to finish the fence." She drove the next post in. Clean. Solid. Done right. Because a fence post done wrong just means you're out here again tomorrow. And she intended to be here tomorrow. She intended to be here for a long time after that. Long after the fleet arrived. Long after the battle came and went like weather. The Veth had studied the file. They had read the numbers and looked at the biology and drawn their conclusions from the comfortable distance of a war room on a cold ship. They had seen soft skin and calcium bones and no armor, and called it minimal. They had never thought to read the other file, the old one, the one written in 10,000 years of conflict and survival, and the slow, patient refinement of exactly how things break. They were about to read it now, whether they were ready for it or not.